welcome back. I have brought company with me today. And we are in the presence of very fine company. And I promised this individual that I would not give a very loquacious introduction. So we have humility on display beside me. But you know him very well. He is the governor of the very great state of Louisiana. He's doing a fine job there, and he represents the absolute best in Republican leadership nationwide. Yeah. Would you please give... Would you please give a very warm and welcome, a very Buckeye welcome, to Louisiana's governor, our friend, Governor Bobby Jindal. Governor.
Here as it is in Louisiana. I want to thank y'all for coming out today. Do you all agree with me that this is the most important election of our lifetime? Yeah! Politicians say that a lot, but it's actually true this November. You think about this president, I've been quoted as saying, I'll say it again here, President Obama has been the most liberal, most incompetent president since Jimmy Carter, now no offense to Jimmy Carter, was back in the White House. Now, why do I say that? Let's start with most incompetent. Why do I say that? Now, the president himself made some promises. Remember, he said if he couldn't get this economy turned around in 3 years, it'd be a one-term proposition. Now, he's broken a lot of promises. That's a promise I'd like him to actually keep. Now, you listen to the promises he made about the economy. He said just give him $800 billion for that stimulus bill. His administration predicted unemployment would be below 8%. 41 months later, unemployment has been above 8% ever since. 23 million unemployed Americans. You look, 30% of those with mortgages underwater. Half of college graduates will be underemployed or unemployed coming out of school this year. Median family income has gone down $4,000 in the country, down $3,000 in Ohio. Nearly 500,000 fewer Americans working here in Ohio. Over 40,000 fewer people working since this president took office. Median household work at a 2-decade low since this president has taken office. Does that sound like this president's policies have worked to you? No. You know, there's something interesting. This president has never run anything before we elected him president of the United States. Never ran a lemonade stand, never ran a business, never ran a state. And it shows in the way that he's governed. Maybe you heard his comments over the weekend. Can you believe that? If you've got a business, you didn't build it. And a few weeks before that, he said, oh, the private sector is doing just fine. It's the public sector we've got to worry about. You know, his aides will try to say, well, he just misspoke, that's not what he meant. I think these comments reveal something about this president.
He hates small business people.
Well, you look at his policies on small business people. He also said over the last several days, he's talked about raising taxes on 900,000 small businesses. You think about that. Yeah, think about that. He truly thinks wealth is created through government spending. 25% of the GDP now goes to the federal government. And you look at the taxes, the spending, and the borrowing. So I think it's pretty easy to see the incompetence part. Now I want to make sure we understand why I think he's the most liberal president since Jimmy Carter. What's his response to this recession? He wants to spend, tax, and borrow even more money than we simply can't afford. I want to remind you of another promise he made. Remember he said he was going to cut that deficit in half by the end of his first 4 years? $1 trillion plus deficits every year since he's been in office. Now, he promised he's going to reform those entitlement programs. Instead, he created a new entitlement program when we can't afford the ones we've got. He promises he cut our health care premiums by $2,500 a year. They went up 9% last year. And I want to talk about Obamacare for just a minute. So I think this shows how liberal he has been as president. Remember, he made a promise that if you liked your doctor and your health plan, you could keep it. Now the government's own estimates, over 20 million Americans can end up losing their employer-provided health care plans. He promised he would reduce the cost of health care, government-owned estimates. Say in 2014, health care spending will grow faster than it would have without Obamacare. He made many promises. He promised he'd protect Medicare. He cut over $500 billion from Medicare. The government's own actuary says that's not sustainable, that's not realistic. He promises he wouldn't raise taxes. He raised over $500 billion of taxes in this plan. And despite all this, you still end up with 26, 27 million individuals in America uninsured at the end of all this, over 2,000 pages later. And we still end up with over 26, 27 million uninsured Americans. I'm here to tell you, we simply can't afford another 4 more years of this president's policy. My little girl is 8 years old. She brought a button home from school. I love kids. They're so honest. She brought a button home from school. It said, "Don't anybody tell the president what comes after $1 trillion." And that's exactly right, because let's be very clear what's at stake in this election. The reason this is the most important election in our lifetimes, you've got two very different visions for America. Under President Obama, you've got what I label basically the Occupy Wall Street perspective, the mentality, this class warfare mentality, where he's going to try to divide us against each other. He's trying to make us more like Europe, trying to manage the slow decline of this great country. There's another view of America. Governor Romney understands that we are blessed to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. That our best days are ahead of us, not behind us, that this century belongs to America, not China.
Well, he stands up for the country.
He absolutely is standing up for our country. But he also understands that in this country, you're not entitled to your neighbor's property. The Occupy Wall Street people have got this wrong. You're not entitled to your neighbor's house or your neighbor's car. You're entitled not to equal outcomes, but equal opportunity. What makes America so great is that the circumstances of your birth, your zip code, your geography, your race, your gender, they don't determine how well you do as an adult in this great country. If you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to get a great education, you can do even better than your parents. Every generation has left more opportunities for our children than we've inherited from our parents. That's the American dream. You know, my dad's 1 of 9, first and only one that got past the 5th grade. I'm sure everybody here has got a story like that in your family. Somebody who was the first to break through so that their kids, maybe it's you, maybe it's your mom, your dad, your grandparents, whoever, there was somebody in your family that said, I want better for my kids and my grandchildren. That's the American dream. And that's why this election is so important. As I wrap up, I want to make a prediction for you. Look, this president, he can't run on his policies. It hasn't worked. He said unemployment below 8%, didn't happen. Said he cut the deficit in half, didn't happen. Said he was going to reform the entitlement programs, didn't happen. Said he was going to cut our health care premiums $2,500, didn't happen. Said he was going to change the culture in Washington. Said he was going to bring the parties together. Well, they did unanimously reject his budget. So he can't run on his policies, so all he can do is attack Governor Romney. All he can do is distort his policies. All he can do is make up allegations, try to distract our attention away from his failed performance and the economy today. So that's why you've heard them go after everything. They've distorted what Governor Romney did as governor. They distorted what he did in the private sector. They've even gone after what he did in high school. I'm just glad we're not talking about what I did in high school. Well, let's be very clear on this. Governor Romney, when he was the governor of Massachusetts, unemployment below the national average. Per capita income growth higher than the national average. One of the top 10 turnaround states. And you know what? Governor Romney has been successful in the private sector. And you know what? I'm glad. I don't want an unsuccessful businessman. I mean, if you had the choice, of course you want somebody who's been successful. And I'm going to say 2 final things. One, it is so important that we elect Mitt Romney as our next president, but it's also important we take the Senate back. I'm also here to ask you to make sure we get Josh elected as your next United States Senator. Jerry Brown was the deciding vote for Obamacare, one of the most liberal senators. He has been supporting President Obama's tax and spend policies. We can't afford another 4 years of President Obama. We can't afford another 4 more years of Harry Reid as the president, the majority leader of the Senate. One final very confident that Governor Romney is going to win Louisiana, he's going to win Ohio, he's going to be the next president of these great United States of America. But it is so important we work hard. We've got just several weeks left between now and Election Day in November. Polls are great. All the advertising, all the TV stuff, that's great. But the reality is the most important thing we can do is go tell our neighbors, our friends, our associates, everybody we know in our family, how important this election is. We've got to go out there and vote, because make no mistake about it, what's at stake for our country is no less than preserving the American dream for our children and grandchildren. This is about making sure we grow the private sector, not the public sector. This is about making sure we don't mortgage our children's and grandchildren's future. This is about making sure we don't continue to create a culture of dependency, where people become more and more dependent on government programs we can't afford. This is about preserving the liberties and freedoms our founding fathers intended for generations of Americans who would come after them. This is about preserving truly the greatest country in the history of the world. So thank you for putting up with the heat. Thank you for your hard work. God bless you.